Welcome to my budget deck channel where I try to make decks as cheap and playable as possible. So if this is something you'd be interested in, then why not subscribe? And new set means new deck. And today I actually came up with two variants, so stay tuned around half of the video, a bit further than half probably, because I'll be chatting a lot about this variant. There will be a different one that includes frogs, kind of, the Nimble Beaver package. It's a tiny bit cheaper than this one, just on the super rares, but if you're into that and you don't want to play Evil Twins, then this is the one for you. But I'm starting with this first, because first of all, if you don't already have Evil Twins, then making this variant also gains you at least some access to Evil Twins. So if you ever want to build Evil Twins on a different day, then that gains you more value, because with Nimble Beavers, let's be honest, there's not all that much you can do. And with Toad Bean Band, the frog package became a lot less relevant by itself. So I felt like this was the way to go, because Runic Spright is definitely off the table, price-wise. So I decided to go for this version. But let's start right off. Let's not take any more time than we need to. One Wind-Up Kitten, because you can easily summon it off of Gigantic Spright. The thing is, you could technically take this out and run another Caligo Claw Crow, because with this card you can quite easily go into Djinn Buster, and Djinn Buster is a neat way of disrupting your opponent's hand traps, especially Nibiru, which is, well, you know, kind of a game ender for this deck specifically. So this card can be very, very helpful, and since this is only really good going second, and if you go first, and since we don't, we only run one Gigantic Spright, which you usually want to run at least two of, we have the problem that if we lose this card and there's no way to get it back, because also we only run one elf because of budget reasons, which you want to at least run two of, if not three, then yeah, we have a bit of an issue, and then this card will basically just sit in our hand and we have to normal summon it somewhat. This card can actually do things because it's a dark monster for the Djinn Buster. So there's that. We want one Capshell because you can technically also summon it off of a Gigantic Spright, and that is somewhat neat because this card can draw your card every time. And if you get it back with Elf, then you can always use it for rank 2s, and for rank 2s, then you draw out a card every time. So this is technically a small engine that gets you stuff. It's not insane, it's not crazy, but it is budget, it is a dark monster. And if you normal summon it and then special summon any of your monsters that trigger, well, that you can special summon from your hand if you control level 2, then that is fine. You can special summon the Crow because that is a dark monster, so that's fine. Let's jump into our Life Twin, Evil Twin package, which the ratios might be like need a bit of tweaking, but in the end I felt like this is what worked best for me personally. You can obviously run a completely different ratio. It's just kind of important that you get these play starters in, and even though if your opponent ashes this or veilers this or imperms this, you still have a level 2 monster on board, and this will be quite important in the future. So we have triple of this because they both start stuff. Thing is, technically you could summon them off of your Gigantic Spright, but the effect to summon from deck only triggers when you control no other monsters, so keep that in mind. That is not the way you want to be doing this. You want to be starting with this in your hand basically, and we want to run at least one Ki-sikil Frost, because I feel like the effect is somewhat nice. This card is in the graveyard, it at least does stuff, and you can easily summon it off of Lil-la's effect. So if this card is in the graveyard and your opponent adds stuff to their hand, which they will quite a lot of times, then you can banish the card and draw a card, which is quite nice. Technically you could split the ratios and like put another one in, maybe take one of them out, but since they're kind of also your play starters level 2, they are your budget Nimble Beavers basically, because they do not lock you into Fiends or anything, so that's quite nice on that part as well. One Spright Blue, I know you want to be running 3, rightfully so, but budget version wise, one Spright Blue is enough to make the deck function. There's ways to search it. You have Spright Starter, you have Gigantic Spright, which technically you want to be using on something more useful, but since we don't also run that many useful things, it's actually okay to get blue out when you use the Gigantic Spright. It's not terrible, you can do it, and then you can recycle it with Elf quite a lot of time. So basically you want to be protecting the Elf, because Elf is very, very important for this deck. If you have a second one, play the second one. If you don't, then it's enough with one, but it's not great with one. Like, the deck is fairly playable and it's quite nice and it's easily upgradable, but obviously you would want some more of the other ratios. Triple Spright Jet, because first of all it can search Starter and it can search Smashers, which we run 2 of. Some decks will only run 1, but I feel like our space isn't that cramped because of hand traps and stuff. Well, none of that is remotely budget, so I felt like having more searches, especially since we run a 3-jet in the grind game, this card can be very good. This card can be very good against your opponent's floodgates as well, because it's one card your opponent controls and you banish it actually. So this basically gets rid of lots of stuff. It doesn't target. So yeah, this card is very, very important. Costs you some resources, that being said, but the card is still very, very strong. Pixies at 1 if you need to get over certain, like your deck doesn't explode with attack power, and sometimes you do need this card to actually get over your opponent's monsters, because you otherwise might not be able to. There's a spell card, Spright spell card, that could also do that. That gives you like 1,400 attack points. I was very tempted to run it, but I couldn't find the space in it. If you want to, you could also run that either instead or in addition. A different thing that we do in comparison to most other decks, I would assume, is we run triple red and triple carrot. For some reason, they didn't stay with the color theme there. I mean, I guess carrot is probably some shade of color, but point is, these are spell trap negates, which is very, very important, because there's lots of broken spell traps, especially spell cards, in the format at the moment. So having this card is very, very strong. And Spright Red is also a 3-off, because they can both special summon themselves onto your board, so they're play starters, and they are negates and stuff, so they basically are like your spell traps as well, but they then also kind of work on second. It's not as good, but it still does stuff. Obviously hand traps are better, so if you want to cut them down to like 1 or 2 and then play some other hand traps, Maxi, Ash Blossom, Nibiru, I don't have to tell you what hand traps are around, I'm pretty sure you're aware of that, then you can play this. But if you want to keep it as cheap as possible, I feel like them at 2 or 3 at least is not too bad, especially in a deck that has quite a lot of play starters anyway. One Ash Blossom because you get it for free, basically. One Lightning Storm because you basically get it for free. And you do want to go first with this deck, don't get me wrong, but there will be scenarios where you go second and then you need a board wipe, especially if you play against back row decks and you have nothing else really that does much against back row decks. So I put in one Lightning Storm if you have it. Feather Duster is also absolutely fine in comparison, but I feel like this card is sometimes a bit more versatile, and also more people will have it because it comes in the packs. So that is actually why. One Pot of Prosperity, because consistency is consistency. There's so much in the extra deck that you don't use, so you can easily get rid of it. And it does hamper some of the Evil Twin stuff, because obviously they can draw and then you can't draw anymore. Capshell as well, but that is a small price to pay if you want more consistency. Talking about consistency, double Life Twin Sunny Snitch. The card is very nice, and technically you kind of want to run it at 3, but budget deck, so I try to keep it as low as possible. And I'd rather play a second Ki-sikil, so I can actually start the combos more often and recycle the whole Evil Twin package. So I felt like this was what I wanted to go for. 2, she seems fine. The effect when you gain life points and your opponent gets damaged isn't too bad either, especially considering that you will have hard times finishing the games off from time to time. So there is that. Forbidden Chalice, very good card going second, very good card going first. And budgety. Forbidden Droplet, same thing as Lightning Storm and Ash Blossom. Most people will have it because it was in these packs. If you don't, I really recommend getting these bundles because they're like so much value in general. Spright Starter, very important card. It is literally a starter. So that card's quite nice. Remember, it locks you into some stuff, but it doesn't really matter in the deck. Smashers, already talked about it. Very, very nice card for multiple different decks, funny enough. But here, obviously, for the removal, Lost Wind, because you kind of want to be going first, and this card comes back. So good for the grind game, good for attack reduction, actually, is very important in this deck. Do not sleep on the attack reduction effect of this card in this specific version. Infinite Impermanence, want to run that with 3, you could cut stuff like the Punk Dangers, among other things if you want to. If you have 3 of this, play 3 of that one. Solemn Judgment, just to stop certain very blowouty spell trap cards, well, maybe spell cards, or other monster summons. For the extra deck, Herald of Pure Light, you can add 1 card back to your hand, which can come in handy from time to time, and you do want this sometimes, so I thought, why not? Yes, you have to shuffle a card back in hand, but usually the cards in your hand aren't the most of your problems in Spright versions, so I felt like 1 Herald in this variant is fine. This card very good, somewhat of a negate. Yes, your opponent can easily run it over, so it's only really good against hand traps, but at least forces your opponent to go into the battle phase if you're playing against a less competent deck, so they can't finish you off at least. Cat Shark, technically possible because you can double the attack of one of your Xyz monsters, which can be quite good for your Gigantic Spright, so why not? Crumble Logos, also very good if you double the attack of this card, quite nice. Another negate card, technically you can also run double Crumble Logos if you want, up to you. Mannequin Cat has some nice usages actually, there's some fun stuff that you can do with this. Keep that in mind, also like in mirror games it's somewhat fun. Other cards you can consider running: Sky Cavalry, Soul Sweeper is a card that you could be running. Obviously Zeus, very very important in this deck. For the extra deck, Nightmare Cerberus and Phoenix, because these cards are fun. IP Masquerena, very very strong, especially in combination with Unicorn and other stuff, because then during your opponent's turn you can actually go into your Link 3s again, so that is not too bad. One Gigantic Spright, want to run two, but only get one because it's budget. Proglio to actually get your Spright Elf back. This is a card that I do run specifically to get Spright Elf back, because you have quite a way to flood your board from time to time, and it's not too hard to get the effect of. So yeah, there's that. Double Geonator, because this card does lots of stuff, and it's a link too, so you can actually use it to make a Gigantic Spright if you want to, which doesn't come up all that much, because usually during turn 1 you don't want to make Geonator. Yeah, and then usually you already ran out of the Gigantic Spright, but if you put it back in your extra deck somehow, that would be interesting as well. Double this, because then you can resummon this card once this hits the graveyard, and you can go into the combos a bit more often. One Elf, technically you want to run at least 2 if not 3, and one Raster Liger. Other cards to mention, but you could be playing as Aperia, kind of draws you a card. It's not too bad. Link Infraflyer technically has an extender, but I feel like the Claw Crow is just overall a bit better as extending. Maxi, a very nice card to play, also not bad. And Called by the Grave and Crossout Designator, obviously very very important, because hand traps do annoy most decks, and this deck is no exception at that. Enemy Controller, a card that was played, I think. I don't know if it was just the OCG, it was like a tech card, especially in mirror matches. You can do quite a lot, go in second, it's not too bad. And since your attack monster, your monster have quite low attack points, sometimes the moving stuff to defense position is not terrible, I guess. But yeah, didn't want to include it, but I did want to mention it. Going on to the second version. Alright, back with the second version, and this is the more frogging kind of version of the deck. I included 2 Djinns, that's kind of the difference, because I run 2 Caligo, Crow, Claw thingies. It's quite hard to get this card out actually. Not hard, because you have like Spright Blue, you have the twin, the life twins, and you have Spright Jet, so it's not that hard to actually get a dark monster out. Plus your Gigantic Spright is also dark, so in the end it works. But this has like a bit more extenders, and you can summon Swap Frog off your Gigantic Spright and then get the combo started. Send one Swap Frog, send one Ronin Toad, get it back with Elf and stuff, and then you can go into these kind of combos. Nimble Beaver works. I still included 2 of the life twins just to get more play starters in the deck, more normal summons that you can actually do stuff with. You don't have to run these ratios quite like this, but that's a bit the thoughts behind all of that then. And we still run like the Spright package for the negates and everything. We cut down some of the other cards that we have, just for basically the same kind of stuff. I decided to run one Dark Mist, because this card can technically get out more level 2s, and Dark Mist has like some very very niche uses that you can do. I bumped up Mannequin Cat to 2. Mannequin Cat is can be quite fun, but in the end it doesn't matter what you play. There's loads of other stuff that you can be running. Puzzle Amino is another card, another link to that you could be playing. And that's all. That's the version. If you want to do the water kind of stuff, you're on like 2 silent Nimble Anglers, 2 Nimble Beavers. It's all kind of connected in some way, because you can search this, you can send this, you can send this off of Swap Frog as well, summon something else, and so on and so on and so on. So you do get your value out of this one. And it's a tiny bit, I think it's like 2 super rares cheaper. So if you want to be running this, or if you want to have more space in your deck for like other cards, then this version might be more suited to you if you want to start it out. But be aware, Nimble Beaver besides Spright doesn't really do all that much, so keep that one in mind. Hope you enjoyed the deck profile. Leave a like, comment, subscribe, but most importantly, I hope you have a good day.